Hello and welcome to another episode of Five Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green. Happy to be here with you and happy to have you here with us. And joining us today, again, a good friend. We've never met face to face, but thank goodness this podcast has been able to bring me so many, not only great guests, but many of those guests have become friends. And Captain Mike Daley is one of those people. He is a 35-year fire service veteran serving in a department in Monroe Township, New Jersey. The captain serves as a staff instructor of 2 county fire academies, is an adjunct professor at 2 county colleges, developing and delivering FESHE, FESHE approved curriculum in fire behavior in building construction. Mike is a 20-year member of New Jersey Task Force 1, USAR, serving as a rescue squad officer, and is a FEMA lead instructor in the Structural Collapse Specialist Program. Mike has a bachelor's degree in public safety and holds certifications as a fire officer, fire instructor, fire official, FEMA safety, and holds certifications as FEMA All Hazards Operations Section Chief, on scene incident commander, fire investigation technician, certified fire and explosions investigator, and has completed the Knowledge One Fire Dynamics program from the International Association of Arson Investigators. He has earned international accreditation as a chief training officer and a fire officer from the Center for Public Service. Cap, it's a pleasure to have you back with us again.
It's always great to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, as this might be the last season, I'm trying to bring back some of my best guests if we do have to close it off at the end of the season. And I couldn't have done it without bringing you back to the show.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate it. Very grateful.
Well, thanks. And I am thankful for your time just as much as well. So we're going to talk about today a couple of topics that are near and dear, not only to Captain Daley, but all of us should have interest in, especially our first topic. Captain Daley is the, excuse me, I got to pause 1 second, is the president of the organization Kill the Flashover. And their real goal is to provide people who take these classes. We all know what a flashover can do. We have smoke explosions, we have backdrafts, and we have flashovers. And Captain Daley, with his cadre of great fire officers and firefighters themselves, teach how to avoid the certain, what's the good word to say? The certainties that most of us who have been around for quite a while in the fire service have seen frequently. And so let's talk about that, Cap. Kill the Flashover. You're currently the president of the organization. Let's tell the viewers and listeners a little bit. Oh, there goes the siren in the background. Engine 64 leaving now.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, exactly. So let's tell them about, it was almost like I put a sound effect in there.
There you go.
Tell them about Kill the Flashover and the great work that you folks are doing.
Be glad to. We're really excited about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit organization that provides training straight along the lines of our mission to make sure that we can put as much education out into today's firefighters so they can avoid ever being hurt or, God forbid, killed in a line of duty due to any possible exposure to thermal insult. Chief Joe Starnes and Chief Sean Oak were the original starters with Chief Whitley, and we've been blessed and honored to be able to take the reins and move forward with it. So currently we have the fall semester of Fire Behavior College that's running right now. We have 12 students in that class from, I want to say, 7 different states. We just had the midterm yesterday. Everybody passed their midterm. We're running through the end of November, with the final, I believe, is scheduled for December 11th, all online. These are college accredited programs that we run online for people who are interested. We've covered hundreds and hundreds of different states for different firefighters, including 4 different countries. We've had students from Portugal. We've had students from Singapore. We've had 1 student from Thailand that's logged on. So we've been pretty blessed to be able to put the message out. We are now gearing up towards next week in New Jersey. We're going to be up in Sussex County Fire Academy developing. We've developed 3 hypotheses that we're trying to prove or disprove. And we don't look at it as losing. We don't lose, we learn. Anytime we do any type of educational study, we come up with data, and that tells us what direction we should be heading based on certain things. So Chief John Dixon, who's in charge of the Sussex County Fire Academy, is one of the executive board members on Kill the Flashover as well. His hypothesis is up as well. His hypothesis, briefly, is: can we support flashover, full flashover, in a compartment that only has a vertical air intake and exhaust? And will it share an intake and an exhaust? So we are literally building 3 different cells that are going to be exactly the same, with the exact same fuel loads, that we're going to be running data through with our optic cameras, with our thermal cameras, with our thermocouples to read temperature at certain data points. And we're going to see if, based on some common fuel packages, that would put out roughly 2.5 to 3.5 megawatts of energy in this compartment, which is what we need to kind of initiate flashover on the low end, 2.5 megawatts. And we're going to see if we can do that with that vertical vent. The other 2 that we're doing, we have Chief Jack McGovern, who's one of the executive board members as well, Kill the Flashover, is we are making the application of a horizontal Bresnan application in a compartment. Bresnan nozzles, for the most part, are used in below grade spaces. They're becoming very common again when it comes to void space fires, below grade spaces, crawl spaces, basement cellars. What we wanted to know is, in a horizontal application through a window or through an opening in a door, what is the potential efficiency of the Bresnan in this type of application? So we've known and we've recorded what they can do when they are dropped vertically through a space. We were kind of wondering what it would do horizontally, and that's one of our hypotheses. Our last one, Chief Whitley, who's one of the founders and master craftsman of Kill the Flashover, we are trying to prove the efficiency of Thornton's rule. For those who don't know what Thornton's rule is, W.M. Thornton was a scientist, and back in 1917, he came up with a theory that was proven that the amount of energy that is released in the combustion process is directly correlated to the amount of air intake that you can pull into the compartment. Well, it certainly makes sense. For those of us who drive internal combustion engines, that's how a vehicle runs. Without any air, you're not going to get the car to move. You can have fuel, you can have heat from a spark plug or compression from a diesel engine, but without air, nothing happens. So the original theory was proven to be roughly about 25%, which is what the fire flow calculation at the NFA was really based on Thornton's rule, and we proved it, and it was proven that it worked back in the 50s and the 60s. The question that we have is, when Thornton came up with his hypothesis, he did it with natural fuels. He did it with furnishings that were made of wood, with cotton stuffing and maybe some cotton upholstery. We don't have that today. We have high heat release rate fuels. In comparison, the natural fuels that we see today, the woods, the cottons, put out roughly about 8,000 BTUs per cubic foot. We are now seeing solidified hydrocarbon blend composite furnishings that put out 18 to 19,000 BTUs per cubic foot. So does that 25% opening still provide efficiency when it comes to flashover, or will it become too rich with the new fuels that are burning, or is there a number, an amount of air percentage intake that we can have per square foot that would make that efficient? So we've designed one of our cells to have sliding doors on it. We will start out at a certain percentage, and then we will increase every 10% and to see how the efficiency of the burn goes through that. So we're pretty excited about being able to bring this data to New Jersey. We're really excited to have people that have signed up to come to the class. Chief Dixon is a college professor up in Sussex County, and my students as well this semester at the college that I teach at, we're doing our fire behavior semester. Our students have been invited to come pro bono so that they can come and see kind of how the hypotheses are developed and the setup that we're going to be doing to actually prove or disprove these hypotheses. So Kill the Flashover staff will be up starting Wednesday, next Wednesday, and we're not finishing up until Saturday night. We have some additional people that are coming to help. Chief Starnes is going to be there, obviously a member of Kill the Flashover, doing all our thermal data and all of our recording. We have Ashley Johnson from Ashley Johnson Photography, who will be on hand to do some video and some still photo for us so we can release some of that data as well, both thermally and optically. So it's a great time for us to be going up to New Jersey to do some good things.
That sounds like it. You made a good point, which I've emphasized even since I've been out, and that is the fact that when I joined in '77, in our training, the chief or the captain told us that our response time, we would have 4 to 7 minutes time to get there and knock it down. But if it went beyond that, and that was with, like you said, plain wood, kapok filling from a tree, and everything was really wood, with real wood, and you felt it when you lifted it. You knew it was real wood. But then, as you just mentioned, the whole furniture industry turned over, and instead of using real wood, they're using artificial items, and most of those artificial items are flammable, and that's the key. So the response time now, from leaving the station to getting to the scene, you don't have even 4 or 5 minutes, because depending on where they are relative to their emergency and where the nearest station is, you could lose control within the first 3 minutes if all that stuff starts catching and it starts cooking, other stuff as well. And I think people younger than me, I'll put it that way, have learned that. But at the same time, I'll bet if you go even to firefighters' homes, you're going to see artificial wood products, artificial cushions and stuff like that all have a high fuel load. And it doesn't take, a fallen cigarette butt, a hot match thrown away. Something like that could change your whole day for the worse.
Well, absolutely. And the the heat release rate that's coming off the new fuels is significantly, exponentially more higher, which does require more air. So we are seeing on fire scenes, and if you watch any of these social media channels or YouTube, or if you watch any of the fire videos that people tend to post at some of the groups that go out and review fires, you can see the difference in the way the combustion process is happening within the compartment or within the building, just based on some of the clues from the outside. And that transfers to what can happen to people within the compartment as well in a much more rapid pace. And one of the things that I'm also involved in, I'm also a member of the NFPA 1700 committee, and the new guide to structural firefighting. Well, the revised guide, I should say, the 2024 version is out for vote now for people to provide input, and new chapter has included search and rescue. and how search and rescue should be coordinated and correlated through the process of structural firefighting as well. It needed to be addressed, and there was some really great people on that section, and they come up with 4 points that really drive home the significance of getting out of the building or protecting themselves in the building while they're in there. One, location and proximity to where the fire is. If you're close to the compartment where the energy is being developed and released from, you have even less time, and the exposure is much more significant compared to what it used to be. Now we have isolation. And if you ask some of the students, and I ask this question in my college classes all the time, how many people sleep with their door closed? Very few, still today, sleep with their doors closed. Now, I got to tell you, I was guilty of that when my son was born, and only because I think as a new parent, I had that false assumption that if I heard something, I would jump up, or I wouldn't be able to hear it if the door was closed. Forget, technology. My son's going to be 18 now. Even 18 years ago, there were sensors and there were walkie-talkies and all kinds of things that I would listen to him roll over or sleep or make noise or whatever. Right next to the bed, I had that. So, but I still felt I had to sleep with the door open. But now we're trying to push and get people to sleep with their doors closed. And now we have elevation, people that are in multifamily homes that are most of the bedrooms are on second floors, with the exception of usually the master bedroom on the first floor in our area. But elevation now, even if you're furthest away from the source of combustion, if it's not the heat, it's the fractional effective dosage of what's coming off the fire that are exposing people who are sleeping in the upstairs compartments with their doors open. And the last is the duration. How long are you in the actual exposed area? Because your exposure now, the rate is the same, but the concentration is different because the fuel has changed. So there really has to be that push to get there and be able to do as much as we possibly can initially to make the most good. Now, we can spend hours talking about, ventilation versus suppression versus search. Which one's more important? Which one should we do? How do we prioritize? Well, it's very difficult. There's certain things that haven't changed. Fuel's changed. Apartments have gotten bigger. Houses have gotten bigger. So that means the amount of air that's in the space has increased. So we're seeing these dynamic events occur before we have any clue that they're happening from the outside. Rooms have already reached flashover before windows have failed, because of vitiation, using the air that's in the space and exchanging it with carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and some of the other byproducts of the combustion process. So we're still showing up with, unfortunately, the same, or in some cases, less people. So even though we're showing up maybe at the same time that we were 20 years ago, maybe the response times have gotten a little better, but for the most part, the combustion process is still outpacing the resources. So we have to decide, what do we do when we first arrive to make things better? And one of the things that we advocate is get water on fire as fast as you possibly can. The other aspects can work themselves out. If we don't have enough people to coordinate ventilation and suppression, we're going to put water on a fire. If we don't have enough people to coordinate suppression and search, well, we're going to back up search while we put water on a fire. There's got to be a balance, and we're trying to determine what that balance has to be. And how you fight fires in Florida is different than how firefighters in Jersey operate versus how firefighters in Ohio or in Arizona or in California or in Washington or in Colorado, where we just were. Things change. So our thing with training is, and especially our hypotheses, is we're not trying to tell people to do anything different than what they're doing. What we're trying to do is to show people, here's the combustion process, here's a varying opportunities and options that you have in your hard drive now, which I used to say Rolodex, but I have to remember how old I am now. I can't say Rolodex anymore. Not too many people remember that.
Yeah, this old man does.
But how many resources, how many options, how many tools that we have on that apparatus can do things that we would normally accept to do, and how many of those tools, i.e. a Bresnan distributor or a fog nail, can work in the application, just knowing how to make the application. So for us, it's a pretty exciting thing to do. We get to do suppression and the science end of it, which I've always been an advocate of the science end of this. As much of this is a blue collar, hands-on, pull your boots up, you got to go to work job. And I agree, for the last 37 years, that's what I've done. But we still need to have the theory, the understanding of the scientific theory behind what it is that we do. Now we've put fires out. We were just in Colorado. We used fuel loads that were roughly 3 megawatts in a steel training building, which deflects a ton of energy. And we reached flashover, and we flowed water out of 2 fog nails for 30 seconds, and a total of, between both fog nails, roughly 30 gallons a minute. 30 gallons a minute flow rate, and we put out a flashed over room. So the proof is there. I mean, we can argue your opinion, but you can't have your own facts, as Brother Dixon says. So.
No, it's a good point, because John is meticulous. He is one of the guests who I did get to meet personally at in 2017 when the Great Florida Fire School came in, and I got to meet John Hayowick that year as well in person. And Joe DeVito, who is probably he really is a great student of Andy, because Joe is really mastering tick training. He's now out there teaching and stuff like that.
Oh, Capt is an incredibly intelligent instructor, phenomenal firefighter, a good friend of mine as well, and is definitely spreading the word. And he's doing a lot of great work down by him. Really is.
Yeah,
and he's spreading out more. So
right, absolutely. And even though when I had to leave the active service, I always stayed connected to the fire service. I'd either just visiting firehouses where I was living, and also trying to gobble up as much as I could from the trades. So even though, it was maybe 10 years after I started in 77, then I started doing my own education. Anything I could, read the explanations. Chief Billy is phenomenal as he breaks down instances, and he doesn't make them. I think what's best about what Chief Billy does is that he tells them almost as an anecdotal story, and it sinks in very well to the person who is listening and paying attention to it. And I think that's part of the problem we have today, which is not just what we're talking about with different fuel loads in our homes, but the very fact that tools have changed, attack strategies have changed. But the fact is, if you don't know the basics and you can't harness those basics, then you're not going to be at that top level that we need you to be at.
Yeah,
I think that's the key.
And that's a huge point. I mean, in Jersey, we run a firefighter 1 and firefighter 2 combined program. 293 hours roughly, with a week of hazardous materials response to the operations level that's required under code by us as well. Almost 300 hours. Fire behavior training, 3 hours. So when you think of what we do, and I get it, the fire service has become an organization that has now spread its mission statement much wider. My own department, we do a lot of technical rescue. We're a hazmat decon task force for the county team as well. There's lots of things that the fire service does. However, we have to still come back and focus on things that we need to understand scientifically, and fire behavior is one of them. We added, in one of the academies I work at, we added another session of fire behavior because we felt it was needed. Now with the new NFPA 1010, that's now taken over NFPA 1001, which is now the new going to be the new standard. It references NFPA 1408, which is thermal imaging training. And now every recruit has to understand the operation, application, and interpretation of what they see on a thermal imaging camera. So we've advocated that through Brother Andy for years. And now we're seeing some push to, well, now you're adding more hours. How much is enough? Well, I'm going to steal Brother Andy's line. It's like sending that military sniper into the woods without his scope or his sight,
Right.
and blindfolded. How do you not do it? We have this debate with instructors too, who work next to students as they're in a burning building. How'd they do? Oh, they did great. How do you know? You're in a fully smoked environment, and your thermal imager is still hanging back in the office. How do you not know? So there has to be an improvement on fire behavior, and an improvement on being able to identify fire behavior issues, both optically and thermally with the camera, so that you can make those updated, correct decisions from a strategic and tactic standpoint, as well as from a life safety standpoint. When thermal imagers first hit back in '99 here, and I'm only speaking about my own experience, the big question was, well, you can find victims with that? Yeah. And if you're a town manager, I've always said this when I teach thermal imaging training, if you're a town manager, and you're charged with running the finances for a fire department or for any organization whatsoever, you want to get as much value as you possibly can for your investment. So if I came as the fire chief to the town manager and said, hey, we need to buy this camera because it helps us find people in smoke, versus, hey, we need to buy this camera because it will keep our people safe, because they will be able to identify thermal dangers without the naked eye, before they happen to our people. It'll be able to identify container amounts in possible explosive hazardous environments. It will help us determine where people were sitting in an extrication due to their heat signatures on their chairs, versus I'm out in a wildland fire of 200 by 300 foot in the middle of the night, and I'm walking through this all night trying to find a hotspot, versus scanning it in a different mode with my thermal imager, versus determining if an electrical wire that's broken is still energized because of the heat signature that the wire is dropping. Oh, and by the way, I can help find people in smoke. That's a much better argument than it would be 25 years ago when cameras first hit in '99, saying, yeah, we can find people. So I'm going to get as much bang for my buck out of that. But the other end of that is, and Brother Andy and Brother DeVito are doing great things by putting the message out there and saying, hey, this is not just for finding people, but you have to understand the science and the interpretation behind the device as well. And that's not romantic when it comes to training. Everybody wants to, drop cotton, line in, put water on a fire, and it becomes repetitive. And the problem with doing that is we build muscle memory, which is a good thing, but if we're building wrong muscle memory, well, that's kind of a bad thing too.
Right.
And we're not capitalizing on the technology that we have that's available to us. My own fire department, I went down to a local academy for some live fire training last month, and I was surprised how much we need to go back and improve our thermal imaging training with our own members. And that's going on right now. So we're actually working on that right now. We've identified the problem. Now we're coming up with solutions on how to deal with it, but it's got to be dealt with.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I think another distraction we're dealing with back in the stations are the fact of electronics. People come back to the station, and they want to play games on their phone. They want to look up all their social media stuff. Well, that's all well and good, but it should be categorized as part of the day, because you don't want a team coming back, they wash the truck, and then they go into the lounge and start doing their stuff. But it's not studying for what their job is. And I think, just like I'm kind of in favor of the the discussion right now going on about keeping cell phones out of elementary and junior high schools. I think it's necessary. I think it's proper because, luckily my kids, my two girls are older, but in their day, we didn't have to worry about things like that. Yet, in the first apartment, myself and my buddy, the guy who's still my best friend today, almost 40 years later, we talk about that in their time, my girls' younger time, there was only a couple of things. I know the first, came out for them was right around the Wii, the year of the Wii from Nintendo. They played it, but they didn't, it wasn't their life. It was just, they enjoyed a couple of the games, a couple of the exercise routines, and then they went back to what they knew they needed to do. Both girls went to college. One graduated a year early, one graduated a year and a half early because of credits, traveled to the Middle East to study in Israel, both of them, and then multiple trips there. But they come back, as much as they enjoyed all that, they come back knowing that it's time to get serious about my life and the direction I want, what interests me in doing that. And both girls also went on to get each their own master's degree as well. But I think we're losing that today. I think that some sports folks are feeding the fire because they want to draw more and more followers and bigger ratings on this platform or that platform. But if you take them back to the day room in the firehouse and you sit down and ask them some of these questions, they probably won't be able to answer them. Or they'll use the answer that I had 40 years ago, but I didn't have to worry about electronics.
Well, it's an interesting double-edged circumstance, and I would agree with you. As a parent, I wasn't a fan of my son having a phone before he was X amount of years. But social media influences from a operational and a training standpoint have good points and bad points. And the problem is when it's not, and I don't want to say controlled or vetted. How about managed? Let's just say managed. So case in point, a week and a half ago, Brother Andy had a seminar sponsored by Seek Thermal on the basics of thermal imaging. Well, I just come from a week of training with my department and identified we could use a little training. So what did I do? You want social media? You like electronics? You want information that way? Great. So I signed my entire crew up and we spent 90 minutes watching Brother Andy's presentation. So when I can vet things that are accurate and that are useful, the FSRI program, we're putting our department through all those. Andy's seminars, Capt DeVito's training that he posts. There's some great stuff. Blue Card. Departments that are putting people through Blue Card command training. How great is that? It's they're able to extend that potential student base and give that knowledge almost worldwide, if not worldwide. Look at us with Kill the Flashover. All fire behavior college classes are online. We got great opportunities for learning. The problem is, for every great opportunity that we see out there, and I'm not an Instagram person, I'm not a TikTok person, it's just not my thing. And I'm not knocking anybody who does it, but just because it's on the internet doesn't make it accurate. Let me just put it this way.
Oh boy.
And I'm sure you would agree that we've seen things that have been posted that don't tell the entire story, or tell an incorrect version of the story. We were out about a year and a half ago on an extrication on the New Jersey Turnpike for about 2 hours. And when we were on our way back, a buddy of mine sent me a text to a link to TikTok, I believe it was, which was our extrication. Somebody drove by and recorded it. And I saw myself as I was cutting the driver of this truck out of the vehicle. And I'm like, here's the case in point. That's a snippet of a story that could have been true, could have not been true, could have been missing so many facts. Well, it's the same thing when we see posts about fires or posts about things that went wrong but don't tell you why, or things that happen in a certain reason. And then we get what I like to call the chairborne rangers out, who start ridiculing things that are positive or supporting things that are inaccurate. So it's really a problem because there's no vetting to it. There's nobody that says this probably isn't something that we want to follow. But then again, the other end of that, how much oversight is enough? To me, it's always been very difficult to keep the balance with that, and it's difficult to do that. I think in any department, even with us, we're on shift for 24 hours. We're not standing at attention or running in place or physically doing everything for 24 hours. We get our work done. We do what we need to do. We go to our calls. And is there downtime? Sure, there's downtime. And our members make the most, or our firefighters make the most of the downtime that they have to do what they want, and with very limited oversight. As long as they're ready to go to calls and everything's fine and there's no policies being broken, then go ahead. But it's very difficult to fix that once it plants a seed and it becomes what Brother Dixon refers to as a normalization of deviance. If somebody sees it and it's accurate and somebody gets away with it, well, just because they get away with it doesn't make it accurate. So it's tough. After we both retired from this and the new generation of fire service members and leadership come on, I think that's one of the points that they really should focus on. How do you vet for accuracy with that, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer.
No, neither do I. But I'm seeing less and less of the kid living in mom's house in the basement and makes up stuff that he puts on social media about a fire or about this or that. I've seen less of that now. I still have a problem with some of the things I see when I see a commander or executive chief on the scene with his firefighters, and he's walking around in the warm zone and in the hot zone with his bunker coat open. His helmet is tilted back to the back of his head. Yet you're sending your firefighters 6 feet away from you into this burning structure, and you're walking around like you're in the cold area. And it just made me so mad to see chief officers acting in this way at a real fire. And luckily that software is no longer on social media. It used to be called Periscope, I believe. But we are seeing those people on the links, and I even try now. I just focus on several social media platforms just to promote the podcast, the video, and the audio versions. Because look, I'm the first one to admit I've been out longer than I was in, but it's still a passion to me, and I still want my brothers and sisters to know that they need take away all the modern accoutrements of 2024, 2023, 2026, 28, whatever it's going to be. You have to realize that there are basics that we have to cover, and there are basics you have to learn. If you want to learn, we're here to teach you. We're here to help you get that. You don't want to learn, might as well take a walk down the street.
It's interesting you brought up the leadership, the incident commander, whatever rank, that's walking around 6 feet away. And I took a great class from a group called Fire Smoke Coalition, and they talked about exposures. It's not what you see, it's the 25 to 50% of the exposure you don't see. So case in point, one of the practical evolutions of this class was they had a fire in a compartment. It was an outside demonstration, no water. We weren't doing suppression. Just they marked out an area 15 feet away in a circle diameter from where this 10-foot compartment was burning. And they clipped hydrogen cyanide meters and CO meters to us and told you to walk around the outside of the cone at your own pace. Don't run, don't walk, don't just do you. As the one instructor said, probably 75% of our meters went off. You know, and again, you're far enough away visually, optically, thinking, oh, I'm far enough away. I must be fine. Well, the cones are there. You know, we must be okay. I'm 10, 15 feet away. Heat rises, right? But we forget expansion of smoke, 6,400 to 1,000 degrees. You're talking omnidirectional gas movement. Some are higher than air. Some are lighter than air. They'll raise. Some are heavier than air. They'll sink. And we don't put that connection together on a suppression standpoint. We always put it together on a hazardous material response. But realistically, at the fire ground is where we get most of our exposure. So those people who are walking around doing that, if they had a meter clipped to them, I wonder if they would still do it. Because it was an eye opener for me. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was, and I hope they do pay attention to those. We had some real early on in the podcast. We had several cases of hydrogen cyanide. One firefighter almost lost his life from a dumpster fire. We never used to scot up for that kind of thing, and the hydrogen cyanide mimics a heart attack, a cardiac event. And so they got him to the hospital, got treated. It was about 2 days, but they were able to let him go, and he was fine and has been fine, thank goodness, ever since. But like you said, you can't jump when you go to school after kindergarten. You don't go to grade 3. You don't go to grade 7. You come out and you go to grade 1 or kindergarten, and then you come into first grade and you learn second grade, and it builds. That's the way we should be treating, not us, but the new recruits. Those who are interested need to know that is necessary. It's great.
We have Chief Rob Fling with us on Kill the Flashover, who's
Wonderful
great,
guy.
phenomenal guy. There's a class called Every Fire is a Hazmat, and he talks directly about what you and I are speaking about right now. And he's got the data. He's done the studies. He knows what's out there. His department up in Dix Hills has actually changed their protocol for anybody who has smoke exposure. I'm not talking about inhalation, smoke exposure. And he has become very progressive in that. And we've included that in our fire behavior college, because it's not just about flashover. It's not just about combustion. It's about operating safely. And we felt that it's important enough to get Chief Fling's message out. And we support putting his message out and give him our podium to do that. So that if members wanted to say, okay, I want to take our department wants to take this class, okay, we'll put it up for him, and we'll allow him to do it, to reach as many people as he does. And you're right. It's the things that we take for granted that we don't think are as important. You had mentioned this firefighter who was exposed at a dumpster fire. Let's go back and define what we're fighting. It's a dumpster fire. It's garbage. We are now changing how we look at car fires today. Absolutely. Now with EVs. And when we talk about strategy and tactics on car fires, I tell people all the time, go to the gun. Well, you're going to go to the deck on a car fire? Sure. Well, why? What do you mean, why? 37 years I've been doing this, Steve. I haven't saved a car yet at a car fire. So what are we exposing ourselves to? Hydrogen cyanide, some type of phosgene from refrigerants that are being burned.
Right.
We're talking hydrofluoric acid and hydrogen sulfide gas on our EV vehicles. What are we doing? What are we doing? For what? For what? For a car that's going to be replaced by an insurance agent. It's not that big of a deal. Why go? I know it sounds like blasphemy, because I'm telling people that, to think about their options when they're dealing with these vehicles. I mean, an engine company is showing up today with 3 firefighters, 4 firefighters. Maybe if you're lucky, you got 5 or 6 firefighters, and you're showing up to a working vehicle fire. It's just you with a tank of water till you get a hydrant. Go to the gun. Everybody's out of the car. Go to the gun. What's the problem? So we have to start thinking about changing how we attack some of these things. We really do. And that's, wow, firefighters hate 2 things: change and the way things are.
Right.
So that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. It is. All right, folks, we're going to take a break here, a quick break. And those of you watching the video, you won't see anything different. Also, when we come back, the Cap will talk about their recent trip to Colorado, what they used there, why they used it, what their results were. So we'll be right back right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. Our guest today is Captain Mike Daley, over 37 years in the fire service. He is the current president of Kill the Flashover. And if you didn't hear him talking about it in the first segment of the show, please go back and listen to it. There is a lot for all of us to learn from, yes, young and old, to learn some of the scientific side of fire and smoke gases, because it is no longer, our job is no longer to just show up and put water on a fire. From small, maybe 2 apparatus departments, to a city with 1,000 firefighters in it, or a large community, like, you know, having lived in Livingston for 2 years, there are wonderful volunteer companies all around that area. In Pennsylvania, just outside of Philly, where my wife's family lives, same thing. Every time I'm in Philadelphia, well, every time I was in Philadelphia, I'd always visit a whole bunch of the volunteer houses there. And number one, they were warm and welcoming for another firefighter. They took time to sit with me and tell me what they're involved with, and tell me what they've been doing as of late, and technology's changing and like that. And if we don't do that with each other, then we're often missing an opportunity to bring somebody a little closer in to what we're trying to teach and explain. Like the thing what you mentioned with the hit the car fire with the gun. Why not? What do we got to lose? Just make sure nobody is in the way, and give them the gun. That's it. Put it on. You'll knock it out. You'll knock it out before you probably, unless it's an EV car. If it's a regular gas car, then you probably knock it out before it's even finished burning. And loss of, no loss of life, thank goodness. And you keep everybody safe. And
You limit the exposure. You limit your exposure to your manpower.
Exactly.
Win-win. So
exactly. All right. So now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just another tool in the hard drive to keep in the back of your mind.
Exactly. Exactly. So now, folks, we're going to be talking with Captain Mike Daley about their recent trip to Colorado to test a few things here and a few things there. So, Cap, why don't you tell us that?
Well, a big thanks to Chief Russ Kane, Dalton Fire Protection District out in Weld County, Colorado, for bringing us out. They bring us out regularly to do some fire behavior training for their members and the members of the departments in the surrounding neighborhood as well. So we're always grateful for his support and member support as well. And they are advocates of alternative suppression methods, because they have a very, very large first to response area, and a lot of it is open. So for them, their response is already a very, very long time in what we would consider that we would have here in more of a metropolitan or suburban setting. So they have to make the best with what they can with the amount of people they have based on the time that they get there. And one of the things that I think puts his department above when it comes to capabilities is the openness to try things that are different and research what works for them and what doesn't work. Again, this is how they do it, may not work in how I do it or how it's done in Florida or somewhere else, but for them it works. So one of the opportunities that we had was to try out some different nozzles on similar suppression fires that we would deal with in a compartment no matter where you're from. And we showed what the traditional nozzles, the smooth bores and the fog nozzles would do. And, you know, whether you're a smooth bore advocate or a fog nozzle advocate, okay. And people ask us all the time, well, what nozzle would you use? I would use the nozzle that's one, best suited for the operation, and two, the one you know how to use correctly, because that's the key. But don't limit yourself to a level of suppression products that you may not be aware of and don't want to use because you've never done it. Well, every fire department trains annually with live fire training, but we were talking about the Bresnan distributor before. I'd be willing to bet, and at least in the 30 plus years I've been working at one academy, I've yet to see more than on a handful of occasions where a fire department has come in and applied a Bresnan distributor just to show their members how it works and what it can do. Now, we run a basement fire class at that academy. We demonstrate it, so the students that attend that class get to see it, but not too many other people do. Same thing with alternative measure nozzles. Fog nails, we talked about fog nails before, which are very big over in Europe, and in some departments here are starting to gain traction. Low flow, 19 to 20 gallons per minute. The application is different because of the pattern that comes out of either nozzle. And when they are used, we've proven that it works. Now, it comes with a device to help put a hole in the compartment wall that you can get the device in. You put the device in, it operates at 100 PSI, it flows. Does it solve every problem? No. But it knocks down a large percentage of the fire that can be utilized while the engine company is putting a line and a working light to the front door and getting ready to go in. Right. We used a what we called the Vlad nozzle, which looks like a very big impaler nozzle, and it flows a pattern that's almost similar to the shape of a pineapple. And again, it flows probably 2 times the amount of water that fog nail flows, but again, in a larger compartment, how does it do? And it does very well. We use the hen nozzles this time out. And the application of how we can make that nozzle work in a compartment fire. There's a couple of different variations of the hen nozzles. We were very fortunate to be able to do some data collection with the use of the hen nozzles. And again, another tool in the hard drive, another opportunity based on how they're set up to use that nozzle and that equipment when they first arrive. So there are a ton of different applications out there, and I think it would benefit any fire service leader to look at these options and say, hey, that might work for us in this application, or we should do this and try it, or how do we even get to, well, the big question I get is, how do we even get to try these things? Well, nobody's reinventing any process here. I mean, you want to try a different nozzle, call your vendor. Hey, we have a live burn coming up. We're thinking about going to this nozzle. We want to see what it can do. Would you lend us one? Sure. Seek Thermal. You're in the market for cameras. You got a burn coming up. We'll give you a camera, and you can play around with it in an environment where you're going to use it. Hen nozzles, same thing. If we want to see this, we want to see how this works. We're interested to see if this would be something that can fit into our cache of opportunity or options when we show up to a fire. Sure, we'd be happy to do it. Ray McCormick puts a ton of training stuff out on the hen nozzles. I'm sure they would be happy to provide some further training or some equipment for demonstration. So you just have to get out there and you have to ask, and you have to have an open mind.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that when I got involved in Kill the Flashover, and Chief Starnes told us, and it resonates all the time, is we don't know what we don't know. As silly as it sounds. But without the exposure I had to a lot of the teachings from him and Chief Oak and Chief Whitley, and Chief Coy, for that matter, when we first started, I mean, we've made leaps and bounds thanks to their leadership, and to be able to demonstrate what works, what doesn't work, how it works, how it should be used to make it work efficiently. And we share that all the time. So the only thing that's stopping, I think, and this is just Mike Daley's opinion, and you can take it for what it's worth. I think tradition has a lot to do with the inability for forward progress in the fire service, right? I get why we do the things we do, and I understand why we do the things we do. And I said this before to you as well. If you don't understand the science behind what we do, you're missing a big piece of this. And if it's a traditional look or a traditional position that you're holding on to, just remember, tradition is nothing more than peer pressure by dead people. We some things we do because it still works. Some things we do because it's tradition, and some traditions need to change. So don't limit yourself to the capabilities of your department because you're hesitant to try something that's unheard of, or something that you're afraid to do. And I say afraid, not that you're physically afraid to do it, but you're worried about the perception from some of the departments around you or from your peers. Forget it. Be an innovator. Be somebody that says, hey, we're going to try this and see if this works. I remember, and I don't know if you remember, Steve, you might remember when the piercing nozzle for vehicle fires, for engine compartment fires, came out on a dry chem extinguisher. It looked like a big hammer with a point on it, and you literally swung it like a hammer. This diamond-plated nozzle hit the middle or the area of the hood, and you pulled the trigger on the dry chem. You didn't even have to force the nozzle. It was a phenomenal tool. It didn't gain a lot of traction because tradition. Well, that's stupid. But that's what we have a hose line for. Okay, but think about this: a quick attack while the engine company is putting the line on the ground, or putting their masts on, or stretching that working length and charging it. Even the best engine company drops hose and sets up in 30 to 40 seconds. Okay, it's phenomenal. It takes 5 seconds to discharge a fire extinguisher. So why not consider these different possibilities for us to do the same job? One of the first years we went to Kill the Flashover, we were with Lars Axelsson, the Swedish fire nerd, who's phenomenally brilliant. He fights fire on a molecular level. It's just amazing to listen to him. It really is. So we put out, we did a fire, and we did a compartment fire. We took the flashover and we put it out with a dry chem extinguisher, 10-pound can. And we looked at him like, no way. There's no way this is going to work. And he explained the science behind it. We went, okay. Well, if he's right, it would be really cool to see if his scientific theory worked. And I'm here to tell you, as one who witnessed it, it works. And took the room to lean flashover. We were 1,100 degrees at the ceiling. I was the extinguisher person, the nozzle person, if you will. And through a small opening in the room, the dry chem was played up at the ceiling level like you would whip around a regular hose line nozzle. And suppression-wise, the particulate attaches to the pyrolysates in the smoke, and it makes the smoke unburnable and knocks the fire down. There's some downsides to it. You didn't get rid of the heat. You're still going to mop it up. And it pretty much negates the capabilities of the thermal imager initially, because the smoke becomes more solid, becomes very difficult to see through, but it's only for a short period of time. Once it settles, the picture comes back up. Does it work? Yep. Can't argue. It works. And we did it with today's fuels. We did it in a structure in North Carolina. We made the application. It works. But to tell people that today, to say, hey, grab the dry chem and blow out that window and do that, it would be completely unheard of. So, and this goes back to our social media what works, what doesn't work, what do we vet, what do we prove? And again, unless you can get the information into the right people's hands, lots of that information never gets shared. So
Oh, absolutely. Very true. So what was the purpose of going to Colorado? And what did you do while you were there to work with those firefighters in that area?
they had a recruit class coming through. They asked us to come out and do our fire behavior program for the recruit class, and we did. And we brought some of their more seasoned firefighters in, and some of their instructors did training with us. One of the things that we also went out there to do was to share a little knowledge with the instructors so that they can continue the message. As much as we love to go out and see Chief Kane, they train 365 days a year. They don't just train 51 weeks, or they don't just train 1 week a year when we're out there. They train 52 weeks a year. So for the other 51 weeks a year, we want to make sure that their instructors can keep the message moving forward as well. So that was part of it. The second thing was, how do they operate versus how a more suburban department operate, and what can they do suppression wise to make that happen? So we covered a little bit more transitional attack with that. Then we talked about, okay, well, here's our equipment. Here's what we have for capabilities. Where can we make this application? So before we went out there, we talked with their lieutenant, one of their lieutenants in charge of training, Colin Roselius, and came up with some scenarios. Said, okay, give me what you would normally see. And all right, well, we had, residential takes us a while to get there. Let's say, 10, 15 minutes into this, which to them is a fast response. And that's not a knock on them, but if you saw the amount of land that they cover, you would say, 10 minutes isn't too bad. And what can we do with limited resources that are getting there? And with these fog nails, with the Vlad nozzle, with the hen nozzle, and what is the application? Okay, well, let's go find out. So we set these scenarios up. We set up a fire in one compartment, separated by a second compartment, where we would simulate we were coming through the front door and then having to make a turn down a hallway and make a push through the doorway. Okay, well, let's try that with a hen nozzle. Well, operating a hen nozzle works efficiently in a different method that we are used to. Well, if we did the same method, we found anyway, and our experience and our experiments showed that the hen nozzle is effective, but there has to be a different method of application to it. One of the methods that worked well for them was as they were coming through the door, and remember the hen nozzle we were using, and I don't remember the number or the model, but I can tell you the hen nozzle we were using threw a blade of water, almost like a fan of water, when it was set into that position. And when you used it to kind of sweep the doorway from the top to the bottom, it worked incredibly well. We also videoed the backside of it to say, okay, is this going to push? Is this going to over pressurize the space? Is this going to be one of those quote pushing fire end quote scenarios? Because people are going to talk. People are going to say, oh, if you do that, you're pushing fire. Okay, well, definitely maybe, but let's see. No, it didn't. Did it increase steam production? Sure. Increased steam production increases pressure. Increase in pressure is going to show as an increase in pressure coming out the door. Did we see more steam come out the door? Yeah, absolutely. But why wouldn't we? Because we're creating more steam. So we understood that. And it worked very well. So in that application, that hen nozzle's a winner. In the event we can't make that hallway, what can we do instead? And we use the larger piercing nozzle, what we're calling the Vlad nozzle, for lack of a better word, as a point where we would introduce that through a wall prior to getting to the room, so that it would start the cooling process in the path of us to come down that hallway and then make it into the room. So we took the traditional smoothbore approach or the traditional combination nozzle approach and said, okay, what if we're good with the smoothbore, we're good with the combination nozzle application. What if we use this? What works? What won't work? Right. And we recorded the data. We looked at the video. We came back in the classroom after it was all done. We were recording with three different cameras on I'm sorry, three different brands of cameras, but we probably had 8 different thermal imagers at multiple different vantage points to say what was it like in the room, what was it like in the hallway, what was it like on the floor above, how did the heat transfer pre-suppression versus post-suppression with the expansion rate of steam. Well, we proved it. We have it. And at the end of the day, there was 3 of us that were downloading all of this data, and then we had to get the people who had that specific camera in their hand. Okay, where were you for this burn? And then we had to label it, and then we had to put them together for each burn. So each burn was numbered. So if you only were the nozzle person on the hen nozzle, you didn't have a camera in your hand, but you were still able to see when we came back in the classroom, okay, this is you. Here's the application. The application was right, wrong, close, whatever it was. And here were the results of that, because you can't see it. And here were the results of that in the room, because we weren't in the room. Or here was the results of that on the floor above. Here were the results of that in an adjoining room that shared a door. So like a fire in a kitchen that you might come in through the back door, and now how does that react in the living room? So those kind of scenarios we did. And we were able to document through thermal data what each one does. Okay, so now we know with these applications how we can make these different appliances, nozzles work. And it was very educational for everybody, even us. I mean, what's one of the great things about being part of this organization is we get a chance to demonstrate and learn alongside the student, and we get to share this information. You know, we left there and probably dropped cumulatively the better part of 4 or 5 hours of video for them to go through and start to edit and figure out what they're going to use. And they can use it. And here's the best part. It's theirs. They can use it for their training. They can use it in their recruit classes. They can use it for fire behavior demonstrations for the public without putting anybody at risk. So there was a lot of great things that came out of this one. And every time we go out there, we try something different every time we go out there. So we've been able to collect a lot of great information when we go out there. So this time around, it was not traditional nozzle application. Everything was non-traditional applications of nozzles that you might not be used to using, and some that are new to the service. The hen nozzle is relatively new, and there's a lot of questions. Well, let's go find out. Here's the best time to find out. So it was really a great experience back in September when we were out there.
Right. I remember when I first started, the strangest nozzle I saw was the cellar nozzle. And the chief was adamant that if we come across a fire in a basement, he says, you're going to cut a hole in the floor, and you're going to drop that nozzle through. And then Roger, whoever was the pump operator at that time, will flow the water, and you'll see, because just don't be right next to it, because if the steam comes up, he says, but you'll see the difference it can make. And we had a couple of structures we were allowed to burn for training. And I was just amazed how something that can spin around like that. But again, you can't see how fast that disperses the water. And then the one we had, they had put, I think in each, near several pegs, they put hooks, small hooks, so that it would help spin it around even more. And we only used it once on an actual call. The other stuff was training, but it worked every time we tried it. And it was just very simple. I looked it over in my hand. I'm saying, this is just, you put the hose in here and that's it. It goes, you know.
We actually did a test burn this past month with the cellar nozzle, the Bresnan, with them. And their question was, we have below grade spaces that have window wells in them. They're about 12 to 14 inches deep in the dirt, and the window, very small opportunistic area to put that cellar nozzle through. how could we make this application? All right, well, the big issue is getting it in the middle of the room. So we took I want to say we took a roof ladder, and we ran the hose woven through the rungs of the roof ladder and left 2 foot of hose out and put the Breslin on the end of it. And then back at the first connection, we put our quarter turn valve, and we told our pump operator 100 psi to the valve will take care of the rest. So we got the fire up to flashover. We got the room to flash, and they have a window well scenario set up on their building. First floor is 3 compartments. Their second and third floor is only 2 compartments. So they put a window well in, and I want to say it's the Delta side of their building. Don't hold me to that, but there's a window well in there for them to do this scenario. And their issue was, okay, I want to use it, but can we use it quicker? And does it work if we put it through the window well? Well, the first time they tried it, it didn't work. Why? Because you dropped the hose in the well and it stayed up against the wall for the most part. So we got to get that into the middle of the room. So how do we do it? Well, let's lace it through a ladder and let's see what that does. And we laced it through the ladder. We had it ready. And then we opened the window well. Once we got the flashover, we lowered it in about 3 rungs in. And when we turned it on, it literally flowed. The video we have shows the Breslin at about a 45-degree angle, well, more like a 60-degree angle, and knocked the fire down in 3 seconds. So we flowed for 10 seconds, knocked the fire down in 3. Yeah, the 7 seconds. Okay, we can probably argue that we flowed too much water from a damage standpoint. Okay, but we needed a data point to go with. We went with 10 seconds. We could have went with 5 seconds. Why did we pick 10 seconds? I honestly don't remember. That was just the data point we chose. Well, here's what we do know. In 3 seconds, the fire was knocked down. So does it work? Yeah, absolutely. Is it a unorthodox application of a Breslin nozzle through a window well? Yep. But does it work for them with minimum staffing and an initial attack in a compartment fire that's been going for 10 to 20 minutes, that's probably got a significant amount of energy floating out of it? It sure does. And that's what we went out there to do, to help them determine the best application with some non-conventional equipment that they own. And it works. And they found out what it can do and what it can't do. And we learned it.
Right.
So now when we come back and we deliver our training and we show this video, not just to the people that are in Weld County, Colorado, but we show the people that are in New Jersey, or we show the people that are in whatever state the member is from that signs up for Fire Behavior College, and we show that this works. We're spreading that message all the time. So it's been great to be able to collect a lot of information from varying applications of a lot of different pieces of equipment in the fire service that most people don't get a lot of opportunity to do for whatever reason. So from my experiences, it would behoove any department, if you have an opportunity to do it, do something different, get uncomfortable. Everybody knows that you can work a smoothbore nozzle. Everybody knows you can work a combination nozzle. Everybody knows that. And you and your members are probably very proficient at that. But what if? What if you had this option? What if you had this potential? My first introduction with a piercing nozzle like a fog nail was wow. That was 30 years ago. Now that I think about it, I was a chief in a local volunteer fire department, and I had a vehicle fire on a turnpike, section of New Jersey Turnpike that we covered, and it came in as a vehicle fire. Vehicle is a vehicle, but this time the vehicle fire was a moving tractor trailer with a house full of contents, including a vehicle in the middle of this tractor trailer. So now I'm okay. I have a house on wheels burning. And I mean, chugging smoke. And I'm like, okay, cut a hole in the roof, put an X in the wall, shove this thing in. When it turns to mostly steam, we'll open the doors and see what we have left. And it worked. A compartment is a compartment is a compartment, whether it's on 8 wheels on a tractor trailer, whether it's a house, a compartment is a compartment is a compartment. And the application has to be made based on the equipment that you have. Can you imagine trying to pull a house full of contents out of a tractor trailer to overhaul something like that? It's just, you'd be there for days. And so this just worked for us. So having that knowledge back in that days, it was the Rolodex, but now that it's still on the hard drive, helps when we go out to places like Colorado and have a good understanding of the piercing nozzle like a fog nail or like the Vlad nozzle is going to work and what we can expect it to do. So, and we share that. So it's a great thing.
It is. You folks go above and beyond the calling to educate our men and women in the fire service. And the best thing is that you're not rehashing the stuff they learned in the academy and they had to know for the first like 2 years by heart. Rather, you're trying to show them new versions, new alternatives. And one of the things I've stressed, I guess this is because I'm a lifetime educator, that most importantly is we need to get our crews give them a mindset where they know that learning is part of the job and not just tying knots, sitting on a bumper of the engine and tying knots. That's not learning. That's practice. And the key is you got to open your mind and open your will to learn more. And again, we're seeing lots of pushback for many reasons, yet it's out there for any firefighter to reach out to Kill the Flashover and say, look, my department is this and that. Could you help us out with some recommendations or some ideas, something like that? That's all they have to do.
It's that simple.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would think you would agree as a lifetime educator that one of the things that I think handcuffs members of the fire service is that fear of vulnerability, of admitting what you don't know. Well, it's okay. It's okay not to know. It's okay not to know. It's not okay to not do anything about it.
Right.
Now, I got to talk with my latest article is out in Firehouse Magazine. And we did an article on the Gloucester City tragedy in New Jersey back in 2002. And I got to talk with Mark Campanell. And Mark Campanell is a battalion chief in Gloucester City. And Mark Campanell was the second to last victim that was removed from that building collapse alive. So listen, we can all read reports and quote NIOSH statistics, and I'm a firm believer that if you really want to know what happened, you got to talk to somebody who was there. And it was really an eye-opening experience. And I applaud him because he unfortunately had an experience that none of us ever want to have. Nobody ever wants to experience a line of duty death. But he's had the bravery to do something about that and make change. And I wrote this in my article, and I ended my article with this, and I really, really thank him for this because I believe what he said sums it all up. You do not, and I'm quoting him, this is his quote, you do not have the right to be ignorant about anything in this job. So many people rely on us to be on top of our game all the time. Nobody has the right to be ignorant. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your crew. You owe it to your family to be as well educated in this business as you possibly can. Career, volunteer, I don't care. Doesn't matter. We all want the same thing. We all want to go home. We all want to do the job the right way. And when we bring that passion to do that sometimes means you got to be a little vulnerable and learn things that you didn't know. Okay, but now you do, but you don't have the right to be ignorant about it. And I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to ever talk to him. I really am.
That's an amazing story. And again, as you said, unfortunately, it includes the loss of a brother or sister. And we never want to see that happen again. Things change. We just lost an assistant chief. I'm trying to remember where he was. They were setting up, connecting a 5-inch LDH to a hydrant, and they were going to be setting it up to then connecting it to the engine. And somebody drove over the hose, blew off the coupling from the hydrant, and injured 2 other firefighters and killed the assistant chief.
Oh, sorry to hear that. I didn't get word on that one.
Yeah, that's I think that came in Monday's. I think it was in Monday's news day from Firehouse,
Oh,
and I think then was followed up a couple of minutes later by the fire engineering posting of it as well. That's something we don't even really think about. We do get teed off when we have a line across the road and somebody just jumps over it. After we blocked it, everything like that. It's me. I'm more important than you guys, whatever you're doing. So I got to get there, and I'm just going to do what I have to do. Another one happened, I believe, last weekend, and the guy said, "I don't care about the frickin' hose." The police officer said, "Well, you do now." He says, "Because, you ran over the hose, you damaged equipment. So you're going to be held for it. And first of all, you're going to get a ticket for going through an emergency scene after it was blocked off."
wow.
But unfortunately, whether you're in Jersey, and I remember driving when I lived in Livingston and driving into the city and driving from Livingston into Caldwell. And the same things here in Florida for the past 30 plus years we've been here, is drivers have just gone bonkers. Nobody really cares about anybody else on the road. It's just it bothers me a great deal that our own people don't follow the rules. How do we tell the public to?
Yeah.
And that's the key. But I think, as you said, and I've seen all along since I first met Chief Starnes at one of the conferences, and in a sense, is that it's education. Education can improve anyone, no matter your field. You stick with the education, go extra sessions, you go a special conference, local conference, regional conference, even one of the 2 big conferences. The fact is that if you learn, and we're not saying you have to study 10 hours a day. You learn it when you're at the station. You learn when you come home. You learn a little bit. You don't have to, again, swallow a big giant pizza without any slices. You cut it up, you learn a little bit at a time, then you amass the knowledge to face that issue.
You bring up a good point about education outside the department. You're never, and I'm going to quote Brother Andy, you're never a prophet in your own hometown. I'm fortunate that I have an audience every 4th day when I go to work, but I'm not the end all, and I shouldn't be. Get out and see what other departments are doing. Get out and see what other areas do for training on similar topics. Get out and see. You have opportunities to get out and attend different conferences. They don't have to be the Firehouse Expo or the the FDIC. There's a ton of local conferences that are bringing really, really talented people up front. Go to those. Go online and vet your education. Make sure it's vetted. Make sure it's on one line you want. Even if you pull one thing out of it, then it was worth it. It really was. As a student of the craft, as I tell people, I'm a 37-year student of the fire service. I don't consider myself an expert in anything, but always learning, taking a class, I sit and listen to Andy's podcast as well because Andy's just the guy. I think I know a lot about thermal imaging, and then I listen to Andy, and I find out that's a little bit more that I probably didn't know. And that's just doing the right thing. That's showing that you're not ignorant to what this profession requires. That's it.
A quick anecdote: when I went to the first Great Florida Fire School, the first class that I meandered to was Joe DeVito's, and I sat there with a notebook and pen. I must have taken 17 pages of notes.
As I say, you probably have carpal tunnel from that experience.
Yeah.
If I had to get,
And he said, "Well, why did you take notes?" I said, "Because I want to learn." I said, he says, "But you're not going to be using a thermal, you're not a firefighter anymore." I said, "Yeah, doesn't mean I have to stop learning."
right?
That's why I read every issue. I read all your articles as they come through. And then I save the magazines for my buddy who I met in North Carolina the night we were voted in. And that was 1977. And he's still my best friend today.
Yeah.
And, we spent, he had more time to spend because he was just taking a few classes. But even working as the educational director for the synagogue, I worked easily 60 hours a week, but I always made time almost 3 or 4 days a week to have lunch at the fire station and hear what they're talking about or they're willing to showing something because they weren't used to having somebody really gung-ho who wants to learn other than just putting wet stuff on the red stuff,
A couple months ago, earlier this year, I got a call from Teddy Goldfarb. Teddy Goldfarb's retired chief, FDNY, started fire science program at one of the colleges. Called the fire station, looking for me. I didn't even know he knew I existed. I just happened to be working that day. He says, "I got some thoughts on attic fires. I want to run by you. What do you think?" "Yeah, be great. When are you available?" He goes, I'm in Monroe today. Here's my address." He came in. I introduced him to the crew. We sat at the table for 4 hours. I bought him lunch, and we shared knowledge. Talk about a learning experience. 40 some odd years at the FDNY, sitting at your table, talking about strategy and tactics. I would not have missed that opportunity for anything. And, and it's funny because I have younger guys in my department, obviously. And I had one guy ask me, "Who was that?" And I just looked at him and I went, "Okay, I got to realize that he's half my age."
Yeah.
So he would not understand who he was. So I had to explain that to him. And that's not a slight against Chief Goldfarb. It's just, we forget the things we take for granted in our generation that we know about versus what today's generation is learning about too. So I think it's really a responsibility. And it was a responsibility. And now I understand it being in that older generation of wanting to pass
the torch,
this knowledge on. And you have to pass the torch at some point. And boy, that's a tough pill to swallow. In 14 months, that's going to be it for me. I'm stepping off the rig, the end of next year. I'm not leaving the fire service, but it's time. It's time. It's 37. It'll be 37 years and 4 months. And it was a great career.
I know. I feel it. I know exactly.
You've been there and, you're there. And it's time now, but it's time. And you hope that you leave not a legacy, but you hope you made it better.
Yeah. That's all we can do as teachers. Because if you're a firefighter and you really care about it, not only should you keep on learning, but start teaching, sharing the knowledge you pick up, even if it's over the lunch table, just to get one other person or another firefighter. Really? Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was wonderful. All right.
Yeah,
check it out. That's what it is.
I agree.
When I was forced out because of my injury after only 8 years, it was tough to get over. They made me a town fire inspector, which was very nice of them to do so. And I took the classes and I kept reading stuff about what an inspector has to do.
Mhm.
And I knew it wasn't going to be long because we were already thinking of moving out of Syracuse. But it was a hard knock for me too, you know. So sometimes I'm writing an article for Crackle, and the article's about trauma is not necessarily what you see. Trauma can be what you experience. And I talk about thanks to a former guest on the show who's also a little therapist. We talked a bit, and she defined what my traumas were because she said, "What kind of traumas?" I said, "I don't have any traumas. Bad accidents and horrible things." She goes, "No, everybody has traumas." Well, I was never hurt bad. I mean, my knee was the worst thing, blowing up my knee. No, she goes, "There's more than that. You think about it." So I had 2 weeks to think about it, and I realized that the two traumas were I wasn't able to save my dad because when he was in VTAC and Massachusetts back in 1984, only had paramedics serving Boston Health and Hospitals. It had not been granted to the state.
Wow.
So this was my hometown where I grew up, and when I saw my dad, I called 911, started taking his vitals, went downstairs, got my BLS bag, started writing vitals. The guys come upstairs, and I said, "We need the defibrillator. We're going to need the chem case. Just get everything." Because Steve, we can't. I said, "What do you mean you can't?" All right, we'll get it in the ambulance. It goes, "No, Steve, we're only EMTs.
Wow.
We're not paramedics." So we got my dad into the ER okay. He came through the ER, but uh, just about 2.5 hours later, he passed. And the other was when my knees were cut off. My legs were cut off at the knees when I had to stop being a firefighter.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, these last 6, 7 months since she and I talked about it, I realized that it is a trauma. It is a trauma. When you could have helped your own father in VTAC,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden the tools, it's like the gloves just fall apart in your hands. You can't do anything. And I didn't even think he'd make it to the ER with it. But unfortunately, most of the time, CPR um, is not necessarily positive for VTAC. It's not going to really make a change like we can with even an arrest, we can do CPR. But I know what you're feeling like. It's what we deal with,
Yeah. No, I agree.
especially if we love what we do.
And I think that's the toughest part. Yeah. Knowing what you can contribute, what you did contribute, and hoping somebody continues to contribute.
Yep, exactly. All right, Cap, let's tell the listeners how they can reach you and Kill the Flashover, please.
Well, if you go to our website, killtheflashover.com, we have our fire behavior college schedule up. We have our schedule where we're going to be. We have some classes listed. You can sign up for fire behavior college. When the announcement comes out, we'll be doing another fire behavior college session. We'll be doing part 2 in the spring. Should run. I'm going to say probably it'll start the end of January, beginning of February. So after the holidays, look for the announcement on our social media pages for Kill the Flashover, our website, killtheflashover.com to register. You can, there's a click there to contact us. If you send us a message, it goes to 4 of the members of the e-board. One of us will get back to you within the day. So we are very easy to get a hold of. You can post questions, ask for information. Opinions are always free, but you feel free to reach out for us anytime.
That's great. Cap, I can't thank you enough for joining me today.
Well, every time I come out and join you, Steve, it's a great honor and an opportunity, and I'm glad you had me come back.
If we keep going, I'll have you back again.
Well, hopefully we get to see each other again.
Yep. All right. Again, our thanks to Captain Mike Daley from Monroe Township, right?
Yes, sir.
And you can also contact us at dalmatprod@outlook.com, and we can steer you back. I made some notes here. I'll put some of them in the show notes as well for you. But sincere thanks to Captain Daley for sharing more of his knowledge with us. And if you're watching the video, this will end the show for you. If you are listening to the podcast, we'll have a couple of PSAs, then we'll be back with a little bit more programming. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember to stay safe, stay well. Let's make sure we take care of others. Take care now.